back to my channel. I'm actually filming this video a second time because the first time, really annoyingly, I filmed it and basically it was a completely wrong angle, so I'm hoping this is a little bit better. It's really annoying, but I'm not really content with, poor quality. I hope this one's a little bit better. As I say, I'm filming today on Thursday the 28th. Normally I film on Wednesdays, but I went on an outing the other day with my support worker to Winchester, and I completely forgot in last week's video to let you all know, so my apologies for that. I did post up on Twitter, so for those of you following me on Twitter, you would have heard about the change, but for those who haven't, as I say, I apologise, and I do try and let you know if there's been any changes, but occasionally, obviously, I completely forget to say in my videos, just because normally I do film on Wednesday, so if there's been a change, I sometimes forget myself. Anyhow, so I'm filming today on Thursday. In this video, I want to answer a viewer question that one of you posted up on Twitter about basically to do with my thoughts about diagnosis and whether or not diagnosis made me depressed or whether it was a good thing. I have already done a video all about diagnosis, which I did last year. So if you look back at my older videos, you'll see the full analysis of my diagnosis and all what led to diagnosis, where I talk about it there. But so this video, I'll just try and talk about this in brief, but I could come back to this in future if you want to know any more, if what I say, gets you thinking about other questions, do post them below. Now, it's quite hard for me to really know how I feel about diagnosis, because generally I do find it quite difficult to answer questions about how I feel about things, just because really my feelings are quite an enigma to me a lot of the time, and I don't tend to really dwell on my feelings very much. I tend to think more about events that happened in my life. X, Y and Z happened at this particular time. Writing about precisely how I feel about something can be quite difficult. It's easier for me to write about it than talk about it, so I might at some point see if I can write a blog, and I think I have written some previous blogs in this area. If you check out my blog, Autism's individual blog, you might find some stuff on there too. So how do I feel about it? Well, I think generally, obviously, it's a really, really good thing, because as a teenager, before I obviously even knew about autism, I just had this feeling that I was different to everyone else, that basically I was weird and strange. I was a strange kid, I was a loner, I was basically not popular, never popular, the kid that would basically just be on her own most of the time. Occasionally, when I started secondary school, I had a succession of about 3 friendships, but they all failed one after the other in very rapid succession, and they hardly lasted long at all. For various reasons, couldn't speak enough, followed them around too much, and some kids just tolerated me, like groups of girls might tolerate me, but I never really had any friends, and I was just a loner. So yeah, you do start to feel weird, and you think, why can't I make friends? Why can everyone else do this? I can't understand people, they're strange. I just feel out of my depth, I'm weird, what's wrong with me? I blamed my parents initially. I thought that if my parents had sent me to more after school clubs, but maybe I would have learned how to socialise by now. So I thought it was a parenting failure. That's what I initially presumed. So obviously I did think about it, and I just knew that I was weird. That's what I knew. I knew I was weird, I knew I was strange, I thought it was a family problem, I thought it was something to do with my parents, I felt annoyed at my parents, but then I just thought, there's nothing really I can do. So, and also of course, when I was a teenager, I had other kind of interests, like I was really obsessed with Kate Winslet and things, and as I've talked about, I was wearing babies, and the whole Kate Winslet thing took up a lot of my time and gave me a lot of enjoyment and was a great distraction against all of my anxieties and things like that. So after those initial failures at friendship, I just basically gave up, and I just thought, I've got better things to do with my life. Socialising is not really a top priority in life. It might be for others, but for me, it doesn't give me any real satisfaction. It's just too much of an effort. I just can't be asked for it anymore. Tried, no one seems to like me. I've got better things to do. So I stopped really trying to be social anyway, but I still knew at the back of my mind that I was weird, and I kind of formed my own theories as to why this might be, including at one point that I had a personality, must have some personality problem, maybe I was even a psychopath. Why do I lack empathy? I'm this cold weirdo, like what is messed up with me? Like what's the reason for all of this? you know, because it's impossible not to think about it when you don't have any friends, you know, and you're alone now and you can't do what other people do. You have to think about it at some point. But I think my parents thought about it more than I did, because they were more concerned about me than I was about myself at this point. Even when I had pretty bad OCD, and it was, you know, really bad, like to the point of breath holding and stuff, because I was really concerned about. I felt really contaminated, even if I was just in a room, you know, someone like coughing or whatever. I was like felt really contaminated, and then I took everything literally as well. But also when there was stuff on the news. Like, for example, the bombs going off in London, I stopped travelling for ages, and I even thought, I even stopped going on buses I even stopped going on buses, you know, basically, I stopped going on buses full stop. Yeah, I stopped travelling on trains, so, yeah, it got pretty bad. But I still wasn't like, I mean, I wasn't depressed or anything. I was just very anxious. I mean, I had Kate Winslet. So I was kind of in this little Kate Winslet bubble, and I didn't really think too much about what it all meant. It was my parents who were thinking about that. And then obviously, I see my other videos where I talk about it, because I'm not going to go into that now, but all the process that led to me getting diagnosed. But it's really just my OCD was getting a lot worse. And, but it was obviously more of an OCD, because these problems went right back to my childhood, and it's all the social stuff and all of that. You know, the OCD was really just a complication. And then, so that's the kind of, it was mainly because of my OCD, and also, like the fact I was hardly going out, and my parents finding it increasingly difficult, so they were the ones who tried to get diagnosed initially, and then eventually I kind of thought, actually, yeah, I then did some reading about, because my parents kept going on about autism, more specifically Asperger's as it was known then, so I decided to find out a bit about it, and obviously when I read about it, I was like, okay, yeah, this all makes sense, you know. But, so obviously I wanted to be properly assessed and everything, because I needed that 100% clarification. I can never just think I had something without getting assessed. I'm not that type of person. I'm against assuming you have something without official validation. You know, I do think official validation is really important. And obviously at that point, you know, I was open to the possibility it might not be autism. You know, it could have been any other condition, although I knew it was developmental, but I needed everything to be looked at properly, analysed, and for it to be official, you know, because only once you've had it confirmed by an array of different professionals who specialise in that area can you be absolutely convinced of anything. So I needed that official, absolute validation, and of course that's what I got, and it was quite straightforward, the diagnostic procedure. You know, obviously my parents were interviewed, I was interviewed by several different people, and it was all quite straightforward. You know, once I'd actually got sent, that is, once I actually got sent to the actual those who actually knew what they were talking about, that is, it was a little bit of a problem getting there, but see my other video for that. But once I was actually seen by the people who were experts in autism, it was all straightforward, and I got the diagnosis. I was relieved, obviously, but at that point, I mean, it wasn't a surprise by that point. I knew I probably had it, going by what my parents had assumed, and you know, when I'd initially read up on it, it all made sense. But having it confirmed, that obviously really, you know, made me feel good. Yeah, so it's all onwards and upwards really from there, and obviously I think my life definitely has significantly improved since the diagnosis. It hasn't made me depressed or anything. Obviously there have been complications from getting diagnosed that weren't there before you got diagnosed, so you have to deal with all the stereotypes about autism, you have to deal with people's misconceptions. People often like to put you in a box if you say you're autistic. They assume you're this type of person, whereas obviously if you, before diagnosis, you wouldn't have that problem, because you didn't have anything where people could stereotype you like that, although obviously before diagnosis you were given other labels, really quite negative labels that were very harmful, you know, such as being called antisocial or obnoxious, all of those things. So, you know, you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, because people are going to label you anyway, and it's better to have an official label like autism, where at least then you can educate people about it. So people are going to misinterpret it, and there are going to be stereotypes, but at least you have a way of like helping to educate them. Whereas if you don't have a label and someone not diagnoses you, but labels you, says obnoxious or things like that, what can you do? Because you don't have any reason to explain why actually you're not, or whatever. So yeah, all in all, it's a positive thing. You know, there are, as I say, pitfalls to do with stereotypes and, you know, media and all of that, but I'd rather have that to deal with than to not know what I have. That would be far worse, and I definitely think I would be depressed by now if I didn't know. So I hope that answers your question anyway, but like I say, I can talk about this again if ever you want to find out more, and if this is, and if what I'm saying is kind of, I guess it's like a can of worms, but if it's ever kind of, you know, while you're watching this, you think, oh, I'd like to find out a bit more about that, what Anna's just said there, again, do please post in the comments box below and I'll try to answer it. So moving on now to video number 2, where I'm going to be showing you what I bought on my recent outing.